It was supposed to be a routine departure. Incheon International Airport was buzzing with its usual chaotic energy. Camera shutters clicking like rapid gunfire, fans calling out names, and security guards clearing a path through the crowded terminal. JHope and Jungkook were on their way to New York for an upcoming international schedule. On the surface, everything looked completely fine. JHope was smiling, tossing out his signature warm waves to the press, while Jungkook walked beside him, his head bowed slightly under a bucket hat, giving small nods to the crowd. To anyone watching, it was just another iconic airport appearance. But underneath the bright lights, the atmosphere was about to take a terrifying turn. As they passed through the security checkpoint and entered the quieter VIP hallway, the loud cheers began to fade into a dull hum. That's when the mood shifted. JHope glanced over at Jungkook to make a joke about their flight duration, but the words caught in his throat. Jungkook wasn't laughing. In fact, he was barely looking up. His breathing was heavy, shallow, and uneven. A thin sheen of cold sweat glistened on his forehead despite the cool air conditioning. His usual energetic posture had melted away, replaced by a slumping shoulder and a slow, dragging stride. JHope asked gently if he was okay, reaching out to pat his back. Jungkook offered a faint, strained smile, whispering that he was just tired from the relentless practice schedule. But JHope could see it in his eyes. The color was draining from his face. They were only a few dozen meters away from the private lounge when Jungkook suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. The world around Jungkook was spinning. The sharp white lights of the terminal blurred into streaked lines, and a loud ringing filled his ears. He tried to take another step, but his legs completely gave out. In a horrifying fraction of a second, Jungkook's eyes rolled back, and his body slumped toward the marble floor. JHope's instincts kicked in instantly. He lunged forward, catching Jungkook right before his head hit the hard ground. The quiet corridor suddenly exploded into sheer panic. Security staff rushed over, but JHope's heart sank as he felt the dead weight of his younger brother in his arms. Jungkook was completely unresponsive, pale as paper, his breath trembling. Panic set in like a wave of ice water. JHope cradled Jungkook's head, desperately tapping his cheek, shouting for someone to call an ambulance immediately. The airport staff quickly scrambled to call emergency medics, but every second felt like an eternity. Drawn by pure panic and the overwhelming need for comfort, JHope grabbed his phone with trembling hands. His mind went blank, but his fingers instinctively dialed the one person he always relied on in high-stress moments: Taehyung. Miles away in a studio on the other side of Seoul, Taehyung's phone rang. Thinking it was a quick update before their takeoff, Taehyung answered casually with a smile, asking if they had boarded already. But JHope's voice came through the speaker distorted, frantic, and laced with tears as he cried out for help, saying that Jungkook had collapsed and was unconscious. The smile instantly vanished from Taehyung's face. Color drained from his skin as he stood up so fast he knocked his chair over, asking in complete disbelief where they were. JHope sobbed that they were near Gate 12 and that Jungkook had just passed out. Taehyung grabbed his jacket, screaming for his manager to bring the car around. He wanted to leap through the phone, to drive across the city at breakneck speed just to be by their side. But reality crashed down brutally. He was locked in a mandatory live broadcast commitment, stuck across town in heavy rush hour traffic, miles away from Incheon. He couldn't get there in time. Taehyung panicked, his voice breaking into tears as he gripped his phone, paralyzed by helplessness, begging JHope to hold on and make sure Jungkook was okay. JHope shouted into the phone above the commotion that the paramedics had finally arrived and were placing Jungkook on a gurney, promising that he wouldn't leave his side for a second and was heading to the hospital with him. On the other end of the line, Taehyung squeezed his eyes shut, tears streaming down his face as he whispered prayers into the receiver, unable to do anything but listen to the chaos over the speaker. The airport doors opened wide as the medical team rushed Jungkook toward the emergency vehicle, with JHope holding his hand tightly every step of the way. What started as a journey to the stage in New York had turned into an agonizing fight for recovery, leaving a brother miles away in tears, waiting desperately for the news that everything would be okay. The ambulance sped through the city streets with its sirens wailing, breaking through the heavy Seoul traffic as JHope sat beside the stretcher, never once letting go of Jungkook's cold, trembling hand. Inside the vehicle, the sharp, rhythmic beep of the heart monitor filled the air, reflecting the terrifying uncertainty of the situation. Every time the monitor spiked or dipped, JHope felt his heart drop into his stomach. He kept whispering words of encouragement, praying that the younger boy could somehow hear his voice through the darkness. When they finally pulled up to the emergency entrance of the hospital, medical staff rushed out to roll Jungkook straight into the intensive treatment room, leaving JHope standing alone in the sterile, silent hallway, staring at the closed double doors with a heart heavy with dread. Back at the broadcasting studio, Taehyung was practically trapped in a nightmare. He paced back and forth backstage, unable to sit still, ignoring the frantic calls of staff trying to get him back onto the set. The bright studio lights and cheerful ambient noise felt sickeningly out of place compared to the fear gripping his soul. Every minute felt like an eternity as he stared at his phone, waiting for any sign of an update. His hand shook as he wiped away hot tears, tortured by the overwhelming guilt of not being there when his brothers needed him most. The distance between them had never felt so vast, and no amount of professional duty could quiet the screaming anxiety inside his chest. After what felt like endless hours, the heavy hospital doors swung open and the lead doctor stepped out into the waiting room. JHope stood up instantly, his eyes wide with desperate anticipation. The doctor lowered his mask, offering a gentle, reassuring smile before explaining that severe physical exhaustion, acute dehydration, and an undetected high fever had caused Jungkook's body to completely shut down. While the sudden collapse was terrifying, the medical team had managed to stabilize his vital signs in time, and he was now resting comfortably under close observation. A massive wave of relief washed over JHope, causing his knees to buckle slightly as he took a deep breath for what felt like the first time all day. Stepping into the quiet recovery room, JHope sat quietly by the bedside, watching the slow, steady rise and fall of Jungkook's chest. Softly dialing Taehyung once again, JHope put the phone on speaker and held it near the bed just as Jungkook's eyelids fluttered open. Recognizing the faint, weary whisper of his youngest brother saying hello through the line, Taehyung broke down into quiet tears of pure relief on the other end. Though the New York schedule had to be put on pause and the shock of the afternoon would linger for a long time, the terrifying ordeal ended with a profound reminder of what truly mattered: their unwavering bond, protecting one another, and ensuring they survived every storm side by side. As the news of the sudden hospitalization spread internally to the rest of the team, the immediate focus shifted entirely to protecting Jungkook's health and privacy. Staff members scrambled behind the scenes to release an official statement to the public, briefly explaining that the trip to New York was postponed due to sudden health complications, without revealing the harrowing details of the collapse. Outside the medical facility, security was swiftly tightened to block opportunistic paparazzi and frantic fans who had begun gathering after noticing the sudden schedule cancellation. Within the quiet walls of the hospital wing, however, the outside noise faded completely, replaced by a deep, collective sense of caution and care centered around one goal: giving Jungkook the space and peace he needed to fully recover. Over the next few hours, as night fell over the city, the atmosphere in the private room gradually softened. The four fluids and medication began taking effect, bringing color back to Jungkook's pale face. JHope remained firmly parked in the armchair beside the bed, refusing to leave even when offered a separate room to rest. Between quiet conversations, he continuously sent video updates to Taehyung, who was finally able to finish his mandatory schedule, and was now racing across town in a private car. Watching his younger brother breathe normally and even offer a sheepish, apologetic smile for causing such a scare brought a sense of quiet comfort that no successful performance or sold-out show could ever match. When Taehyung finally burst through the hospital room door, exhausted and still wearing his broadcast wardrobe, the heavy air of lingering trauma completely dissolved. Without saying a word, he crossed the room and gently embraced Jungkook, careful not to disturb the wires, before pulling JHope into the hug as well. Sitting together in the dim hospital room late into the night, the trio talked softly about how easily they had pushed past their physical limits in pursuit of perfection. The terrifying incident at Incheon Airport was a sobering wake-up call, but as they sat side by side, listening to the steady rhythm of the heart monitor, they knew that no stage or spotlight was ever worth more than their health and the unconditional bond they shared.